All right, so so much has happened in the past couple of days that this should probably be a more specific video to each of those events. So what I'll probably do is play some clips pretty much out of context. There's a greater context to each of them, but this is essentially a it'll seem a sensationalized highlight reel of the increased pressure, the increased escalation of the state and all of its agencies using violence, or even just the threat of it. So I think we're going to begin, since we're in a state where like cooler heads prevail, right? Like what I'm about to show you is uh, a lot of restraint being exercised, and like I see comments from people abroad a lot on different videos asking why it is that Americans aren't in the streets in far greater droves with like massive demands and property destruction as a means of asserting boundaries. And like I find myself asking that same question: why were we so enamored with this idea that we should be able to appeal and ask politely for our rights to be defended by the state that we pay to defend them? And I think there's a lot that goes into this. I think primarily we are taught that property destruction is violence, even though it's not, and we're going to have to reevaluate that. And we're also taught that violence is never the answer. The problem with that is, if violence is the problem, like what we're seeing now, to say that violence is never the answer is to be advocating for the disempowerment and disenfranchisement further and further for as long as the status quo is a violent one. Now, there's another element to this. A lot of people haven't treated ICE and DHS and the police officers who aid these criminal acts of forced displacement is because of the fear that martial law will be declared. So even the people who have arrived beyond the conditioning that sometimes violence is the answer still feel a very urgent need to not allow things to escalate. But as you can see, the state is escalating, and I would argue goading increasingly angry responses. Now we're going to go over clips from Minneapolis, we're going to go over LA a little bit, and also we're going to touch on, I forget, it was also in Southern California. And, you know, it's probably not time for violence. I think we need to really incorporate, or at least consider, how to push back in a way that makes the bottom line hurt. Because we have to understand that ICE and the DHS entirely at this point is effectively secret police for privatized prisons and incarceration for profit industries. So, you know, to call ICE Gestapo is obviously right on the money for a variety of reasons. I think I've touched on a few, but I've not gone over every parallel. And I feel like I shouldn't need to. the reality is, if you understand why, a unaccountable corporate police force, militarized police force, is like, either you understand the historical context or you don't. And there's plenty of good information out there on why the Gestapo was able to be so brutal and without consequence until the Nuremberg trials. But as we go through these, we might take a couple of breaks just to do a bit of tapping, because it's heartbreaking and it's enraging. You can't really understand what's going on without strong visceral feelings show up, right? Because this isn't just chaos. This is orchestrated violence against people who are incapable of defending themselves, and intentionally going after states and cities with sanctuary policies to get the most pushback. And it seems very in line with the like Stephen Miller's claim that there shouldn't be habeas corpus, or Donald Trump's claim that, well, if we're deporting thousands of people, we can't have a trial for all of them. We can't do this due process thing. And of course the Alien Enemies Act bullshit, which tries to classify asylum seekers as an invading force of another country without U.S. consent, which is completely ridiculous. But all of that rhetoric is for the purpose of declaring martial law and trying to make it something that's mainstream approvable. Now, we'll talk later about how, a rose by any other name is a rose. So whether martial law is declared or not, if the U.S. is using the National Guard and the police and DHS and HSI and ICE to do martial law things, whether it's declared or not, it's where we're at. And my line in the sand has been crossed personally. I think every person who wants to live in a safer, more just world needs to understand where their line in the sand is. And I know for thousands it's already been crossed. I want to see ICE completely fucking abolished. And I think this situation, the silver lining to all this, is the state's about to prove that communities can protect each other and that we do not need policing. The whole defund the police thing, it's going to be yesterday's argument, because the reality is going to be we're about to enter a point in history where we see just how much communities can protect each other and their neighbors against the police. So, we're about to see why we can go from having a militarized police force to having none at all, minus a few detectives tracking down serial offenders of violent crimes. And even then, that wouldn't even have to be what it is today. But I've talked a lot, so let's get into these.
You could have stopped them!
How did you know this was happening?
Read it.
So if you don't see what's happening there, people were pushing debris like trash cans in the path of the abduction vehicles. Pepper spray. So this looks quite chaotic, right? Um, the people heard that there was this going on, and they impromptu organized, just getting their bodies on the line to stop it. You can see that they aren't. It is disorganized. There wasn't a coherent strategy going into it, other than we can't just allow this to happen, which I wholly understand and fully respect. It's just when we're talking about effective resistance, especially how quickly the administration, or the regime, I should say, is ramping things up, uh, we need to increasingly effectively organize. I mean, I think I need to see situations like this where everybody who shows up has a riot shield, right? I want to see the citizens able to push back. I want to see the citizens in gas masks, so the tear gas that we see later is, ineffective. Uh, and we'll keep going.
A few times by the police group right here, trying to block the police from leaving once again. They threw out a bunch of garbages. Now people are trying to create a line out here to stop ICE and FBI.
Right now, it's your city.
So get the fuck out!
This is my favorite few seconds of this video. Again, in terms of effectiveness, this is just really raw. It's not necessarily strategic, but let's listen to what that fucking Gestapo piece of shit says here. All right, somebody dumps out the trash. Again, not really a properly strategic strategy. More something impulsive and something, I guess, just to show disdain. I don't know, but then listen to this. It's your city. He just said it. It's your city. Someone pours trash on the street.
It's your city.
It's your city. That is an implication that he doesn't fucking live here, right? He's somebody who's coming into a town that he's not been to or doesn't live in to evict people who've never fucking hurt anybody, right? This piece of shit doesn't belong on these streets. And that implication is followed up by, so get the fuck out, which is fair. And the other guy goes, it's my city, bitch. Assuming those two are residents. And I think it's just cathartic to hear, then get the fuck out. Because I think I want that to just be a chant. When I'm talking about when we get to the point wherein we have, 200 to 400 people every time something like this happens, all with gas masks, all with riot shields of sorts. A chant shouldn't be, there should be a lot, but some chants that annoy me personally are ones that attempt to shame, because these guys aren't going to feel shame, right? We'll see some of that, and it is cathartic. These are, Nazis. Most of them are probably racists. But, the reality is these people don't care that what they're doing is breaking the law or violating human rights, because they see through a classist, racist lens where, there are people who don't deserve rights. And we hear that talking point from the Republican Party all the time, that illegals or aliens shouldn't have any due process whatsoever, which obviously begs the question to any reasonable person, well, if you can just claim that somebody's an alien, then nobody has due process. And at that point, there's no such thing as any veneer of justice, because if the claim is enough to forcibly displace someone and they never get a day in court, then you can just say anything about anyone. But I just want to hear it one more time because it's so lovely.
So get the fuck out!
Get the... Love it. Alright, so look at the amount of force there.
So these people are putting up a pretty strong wall here. They're following people, the police officer retaliating. People are pushing back at the police, showing no respect towards the police. People are upset because the ICE did come through here and they did take some illegal immigrants out of here, of the city.
So, I also just want to talk about this guy's framing. He doesn't know about the situation. Well, listen to what he said again. This is going to be probably the longest I take on any one clip. Because this guy's opinion isn't the point. I'm glad he was there. I'm glad he was stating his assumption of what was going on. I don't think he's being disingenuous. But he's claiming that people are showing no respect for the police. Well, respect is something that's earned and merited and sustained through acts of integrity. So, good. They shouldn't be respected.
The police showing no respect towards the police. People are upset because the ICE did come through here and they did take some illegal immigrants out.
So he's verifying and confirming that ICE came through and abducted people. On his account, he assumes that everyone they abducted was an illegal immigrant. I don't know yet, but a betting man bets with the odds, and I would put money on it that there are people who are citizens who were taken away. Because again, this happens all the time. And when we're talking about the 3,000 abductions per day quota, they're sweeping up anybody they can get who looks brown, who looks like they can't afford a lawyer, who's trying to get day labor. They don't give a fuck about legal status. They probably don't even ask it, honestly.
This is how the sheriff works.
Look at that. Look at that guy.
Look, you had this guy taunting and messing with the police. He's gotten thrown a few times by the police. And he's keeping on going back to him, too. This guy right here just got pushed by the police. After he's pushing at them, police threw him down, and he keeps going after them.
And I don't know if I mentioned it. Look at this fucking armored vehicle, right? We're going to see that a fucking lot. We're going to see these armored vehicles. And when we're talking about whatever our definition of martial law is, tanks on the ground seems like at least one part of the fucking checkbox, right? And we saw, like, that guy fling that dude to the ground, charged him like a bull to just throw the guy. Obviously excessive, but these aren't trained officers. These are, racists who signed up to be mercs, to be probably bounty hunters. I mean, I don't know what their pay scale is, but again, it's a 3,000 abductions per day quota that the regime has right now. And that may change. No, sorry. Look at them. They're all dressed like G.I. Joe. But all I wanted was to find that example of this chant. A lot of people saying, get the fuck out. I like the firm boundary of that. Get the fuck out. All right? Not show us a warrant or pretty please, be more gentle, or you know, I'm glad that it's not an appeal to the bullshit. You're not welcome here. Get the fuck out. You know, y'all are committing crimes. I'm not going to try to convince you that you're committing crimes. You know you're committing crimes. So get the fuck out. So I really like that chant, and I hope to see it more. Two armored vehicles. And then we have the complicit local police department not doing anything about the mercenaries, probably aiding them, more likely. Another excessive shove there. And again, that's not the biggest problem, right? It's just douchey, but it's not the biggest problem. But look at this. And, you know, let's take a little tapping break here as we watch you know, the aesthetic of what was sent to Iraq in the early 2000s being deployed on our streets against our residents. You know, it's very infuriating. So let's just sit with that for a bit. Let's feel it in the body. Let's take in a couple deep breaths. Right? We'll inhale slowly. Hold it. Exhale. Let's do it again a little more slowly. Inhale. Hold it. Exhale. And let's just thank our body for feeling rage at injustice. The reality is, I'm thankful for my rage. I'm thankful that when people are mistreated, that I feel anger. I'm glad that every cell in my body pushes me to want a more just future, to want a safer world, a world more fair to people and less cruel. So I want to honor the anger that I feel. But I acknowledge the volatility and the danger of acting on impulse. So let's tap a little. Watching this makes me angry. Watching videos like this make me feel unsafe. Watching videos like this make me feel like cruelty is winning and that justice is losing in this fight for the world and its future. Sometimes I see these videos and I feel powerless. Sometimes I just feel so angry at the people who would hurt other people for a paycheck, or because they're racists, and they want to use violence against minorities. I wanted a world more safe. And I feel like these videos are evidence that nothing's changed for the better. But I do know there are so many people fighting. There are independent journalists who are devoting their lives right now to getting the truth out there. There are lawyers fighting for human rights by the thousands right now. There are hundreds of people ready to drop what they're doing and protect neighbors they've never met. People from their city who are being targeted. And I honor that, and it fills me with a sense of solidarity. I acknowledge my anger, and I honor it. And I will love and accept myself, even with the amount of resentment that this is all triggering. My anger comes from a desire for a fair world, and I honor it. I love and accept myself despite my rage. I understand what causes my rage in situations like this, and I honor and respect my nervous system's flight or fight desire for the world to be a safer and more fair place. But at times it's beneficial to my body, to my nervous system, to my mental health, to release some of this rage and to prevail with a cooler head. Now let's take in a deep breath and release it. And we'll continue. Again, this video, I mean, it's you know, it's, we're here again, right? I'm saddened that there are so many people willing to betray their human brothers and sisters for a paycheck. I'm filled with disgust that a person can make a career out of tearing families apart. I feel revulsion when I see these mercs do anything aggressive toward a civilian, including aggressively pointing a taser at somebody who is just pleading for mercy to be shown. It's vile and it's infuriating. But I acknowledge that my disgust for cruelty is also a desire for a more compassionate world. And I am thankful that I feel disgust when I witness cruelty, because it's evidence that a more just and caring world and gentle world is possible. I feel it in my bones and in every cell of my body that the world could be a safer and more loving and more caring place. And I'm honored to devote myself to that idea. I respect my value for compassion. I accept my revulsion. I even thank my revulsion for keeping me away from being like one of those men. I'm thankful that I am driven toward a loving and nonviolent approach to solving my problems. And I am thankful that my nervous system so much prefers compassionate action and connective action. Oh, this is how the union leader of the, I think it's SEIU, was shoved down and detained. So that's a union boss of a union that is like 700,000 people strong. So this might help coalesce the need for a general strike, as well as the need for, or rather, yeah, the motion, the movement to abolish ICE. And at this point, the police fuck him. I wanted to show this parallel. So supposedly there's a lot of abducted people, most of whom are probably immigrants, one would assume. And this bus keeps creeping forward. It's hard to see from how far the helicopter footage is away, but it is going forward, and there are people in the path of it. And it reminded me of the Tiananmen Square tank man. And so did this. In fact, in some ways, a bit more directly. Oh, wait. Sorry. That's not it.
You see one person trying to
Look at him.
stand right in front of this.
He's just trying to block the path.
It's just such a dangerous situation here. And it's really not going to do him any good to be standing there and possibly get ran over by agents. So here they are. They're on 9th Street now. The crowd is running alongside with these vehicles. And I'd pretty much guarantee that this SUV is not going to stop. Someone throwing, looks like, wow. All right, let me widen out here. Okay, so we saw some eggs being thrown at the vehicle. Now he is just, partly ran over by that SUV.
Now,
there goes.
The reason I really want to show this is when you first saw the Tiananmen Square tank man, it wasn't about, like, the visual is so powerful because you understand that that tank could run him over, and he's standing with his convictions, right? And I just want to go back and play what this guy is saying and just pretend he's saying this about the Tiananmen Square tank guy.
It's just such a dangerous situation here. And it's really not going to do him any good to be standing there and possibly get ran over by agents. So here they are. They're on 9th Street now. The crowd is running alongside with these vehicles. And I'd pretty much guarantee that this SUV is not going to stop. Someone throwing, looks like...
Wow.
All right, let me widen out here. Okay, so we saw some eggs being thrown at the vehicle. Now he is just, partly ran over by that SUV.
Well,
And there goes,
getting up.
oh, it looks like a bicycle was also struck in the crosswalk here. It's just a dangerous situation. It doesn't, not really going to prevent them from leaving,
But imagine that being the commentary on the Tiananmen Square tank man, right? Oh, this won't be effective. Oh, he could get run over. This was, a dangerous waste of, action. And, it's not that it's, a subjective thing in terms of one man's capability against a row of tanks or against a part of a convoy, the caboose of a convoy of, ICE vehicles. And I don't advise this strategy being one person getting in the way. As you can see, that was a hit and run, and there's no way that the person driving that car is ever getting charged. Let's be real. If it happens, it's after ICE is abolished at the next Nuremberg trials. But even then, probably not. So I just wanted to play that because that's the part of history that came to my mind. So that convoy went into this federal detention building, and people followed the convoy here and began to kind of occupy the space outside of it for a protest. This guy is shielding this woman. Let's go back. So these guys are firing the tear gas pellets or whatever those are. And this man has a shield and he's walking this woman out away from the shrapnel. And then we see that. Now he's charging, acting like he's a fucking... Fuck that guy. And this is the LAPD vacating that area. Look at this. Again. You get the point. A rose by any other name. So this means within days of each other, we've had multiple of these armored vehicles with, you know, a bunch of people dressed like they're you know, G.I. Joe, or like they were in Iraq. But this is obviously a pattern, right? If within the past 3 days, this is LA, we saw them in Minneapolis, and we're about to see them again in, I can't believe I forgot the other one. Hopefully there's something that reminds me. But again, you get the point here. This is now, I wanted to include that because this is kind of like an example of rage with nowhere to put it, right? I mean, what else is this guy gonna do? And I wanna, like, that is an act of an individual, fine, but the conditions that lead to why he's pissed off enough to do that is also something outside of his control, which oftentimes lashing out with any kind of destructive behavior is tied to a sense of powerlessness, or at least very often that's the case. And when you have material conditions that force that feeling of disempowerment, especially in a highly volatile, highly charged thing like this, where the brutality that you're expected to live under is on full display, it's something to really consider when we're talking about causal factors of these kinds of situations. This is in New York. Again, you get the point. It's very aggravating. Did it say? Well, I'm gonna go back and hope that it said the name of the place. Paramount, that's it. This is Paramount, California. But look at this line. It's heavily militarized line. They're launching tear gas. There's some people who are masked up, kicking them back. And this was them attempting to slow a raid of day laborers, I think outside of a Home Depot. Look at how fast these vehicles are going. So, again, we're talking, look at how fast these vehicles are going. That could be used to our advantage, seriously. Now, obviously, throwing rocks at cars that probably have bullet-resistant windows isn't really a good strategy. This is more a show of disapproval. However, there are those strips of like spiked grating that police use to pop the tires of any car that goes over it. With how fast these fuckers are going, if somebody were to get one of those out there, they could immobilize one of these fucking vehicles. And when we get to that point where it's time to start having quotas of how much government property will be destroyed every day that ICE is not abolished, if they have daily quotas of fucking over 3,000 people and their families every day, we're going to need to consider how much we're going to make the government lose, how much we're going to make Geo Group and Core Civic lose every day that this shit takes place. Obviously, we're seeing a lack of organization to the point where that's not possible right now. But when we're there, a situation like that would have been a great opportunity to strip the fucking wheels off several of those cars. And if we had 400 to 500 people riot geared up, what are they going to do? We decide, and that's where we want to be. We really need to have the amount of power to just overwhelm and force the release of custody. We can't ask senators and Congress people and whoever else permission to let people go back home. If they don't have a removal order, we need to be able to force that to go back home. Right? We need to be able to physically overpower any group of these mercenaries, so that anybody who is taken without a signed judicial warrant will be released from, their captors before ever getting to the detention center. I also wanted to include this. This is kind of a funny act of resistance. He's mocking these dumb pieces of shit, doing these silly little dances. But let's watch this next video. This is what happens when he's like walking away, or maybe they launched more tear gas to make him walk away. But this is him walking away. You don't even see him in the cloud of smoke. But that's, I enjoyed those moments. That was a cathartic little thing. And I think that's it for those, but I wanted to include this and the next video too.
It's a real shame there isn't some kind of historic parallel for a failed coup with barely any consequences, leading to a rise in popularity of the leader that instigated it, which then leads to a rise in nationalism and a normalization of extremism, which, coupled with economic hardship and inflation, leads to a general fear among the population, which then leads to the scapegoating of people like minorities, specifically immigrants, which then leads to a preconceived notion of what it means to be part of a nation, which then leads to the suppression of academic thinking and critical thought, which then leads to the deportation of people who the government deems not part of this preconceived idea of a nation, even if they are citizens, and the suppression of people who try and resist that. I just wish there was like some kind of historic parallel that we could maybe turn to in times like these to spot the signs and maybe like learn from the past. I don't know. It's just a real shame.
I love it. It's so well done, so well put. And there are more parallels that she didn't go over. But if you understand the historical context of how Nazi Germany came to be, I don't need to tell you about it. And if you don't know, I mean, that's fine. It's probably a good time to start learning how, like, every legal structure and every framework to prevent authoritarian reigns was dismantled because we're seeing a lot of the same tactics, and we're seeing a lot of them work, sadly.
Experienced martial law in Korea, witnessing what's happening in Los Angeles, as well as around the country, they don't look very different at this point. According to Wikipedia, martial law is the replacement of civilian government by military rule and the suspension of civilian processes for military powers. A lot of those are happening right now. It might not have been declared, but it's happening. It's also important to remember that in the United States Empire, most agents are military. The same function is being served. As we know, many United States police forces train with and beside fellow settler colonizer, the Israeli military. And those cop cities, all over the United States, those are essentially military bases. Empire has always been at war with its people. It has always been against its people. It has always been against and at war with us. They don't need to declare martial law because they're already doing everything that entails. So have that clarity and organize with that in mind. Understand the times we are in and who we are fighting for. One of the most impactful things you can do right now is to join local community organizing efforts, especially those that have been organizing for a long time already. Organize forward with the purpose of our lifetimes.
And this is, again, that's to our It Rose by Any Other Name. Like, we're effectively in times of martial law. There might be some checklist items that aren't quite ticked off in terms of how like the level of brutality that I'm sure will increase. Tom Homan threatened LA with the National Guard a couple of days ago, and obviously Donald Trump would be all for it. So, I still think nonviolent resistance is the best strategy right now, because a lot of people don't understand what's going on. You're not going to find any realistic conversation about this on mainstream. I'd really be shocked if you did, because the mainstream media is something that approves of a status quo, and this is a full-on showcase of why the status quo doesn't need to be reformed. It needs to be completely fucking changed. I don't know when the right time is, but I know there needs to be more people understanding the actual situation, and there needs to be campaigns of property destruction first. There needs to be those firm boundaries before lives are being lost through massacres. That, look, if this is going to continue, this is how much core civic geo group and the U.S. government and the cities, the police departments that help facilitate them, like, this is the amount of damage that's going to be done every day that the LAPD helps ICE. It's going to be, say, $40,000 in property damage. We'll burn 10 cop cars, or whatever it has to be. I think there's a step that's, look, we want to do this nonviolently, but we understand that this is a capitalist issue where the reason people are being targeted is because slavery is legal, as per the 13th Amendment, allowing slavery to exist within prisons. That's why there are going to be more and more concentration camps. There are going to be more concentration camps built in this country. So, I just hate this fucking topic. Because all my life I wanted to believe that you could just educate people and, appeal to reason and have speak with like philosophy and heart, and you could change how things are. But I don't know. I feel like I've been that old soul philosopher for a fucking long time, and I don't really know how far it's gotten. Do you hear my cat spazzing out? She wants to play. I'll go get the laser with her. But that's going to be it for today, I guess. I don't know if I'm going to go over those things in more detail. I kind of want to, because it still shows examples of like, here's what worked, here's what didn't. Like I saw somebody put a traffic cone over a tear gas can and do the water bottle trick to put it out. It just sucks that this has fallen upon us. And I know the writing's been on the wall for a while. But we need more agency. And in order to do that, we need larger crowds with organized tasks in mind, with very clear and present boundaries to the agencies, to the regime, to the police departments that help them, that there are going to be bottom line consequences for allowing these mercs to forcibly displace people by the thousands every day. But we need to get to that point. We need to make, like, my city has 488 police officers, right? When they're sending in these Gestapo forces, I don't know how many hundreds they send. It might be larger or smaller depending on the population of the city or whatever. But 488 is not a lot. And neither is whatever force that they're throwing when they move in to occupy a city the way they occupied LA and Paramount. So yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of food for thought. I'm sure you do as well. But as always, it's a beautiful day to resist oppression and abuse. And have a lovely one.